You don't start doubting yourself all at once. It happens slowly, quietly, almost politely. One day you're confident about what you feel, what you want, what you deserve. And then, somehow, you're lying awake at 2 a.m., replaying conversations, wondering if you overreacted, if you were too sensitive, if the problem was actually you. And the most confusing part, you cared, you tried, you showed up with honesty. So why does it feel like caring too much became the reason you started disappearing from yourself? If you've ever felt this way, this isn't because you're weak. It's because your mind was wired for connection in a world that often rewards emotional numbness. Some people don't break you by being loud or cruel. They do it by quietly making you question your own reality. And people who care deeply are the most vulnerable to that kind of psychological erosion. People who care too much usually don't see it as a flaw. For them, caring is natural, automatic. It's how they love, how they listen, how they exist. You notice changes in tone. You sense discomfort before words are spoken. You carry emotional responsibility like it's your job. Somewhere early in life, your nervous system learned that being attentive, empathetic, and emotionally available was the safest way to stay connected, and for a long time, it probably worked. Neuroscience tells us that highly empathetic people often have a more reactive limbic system. That means emotions hit deeper and last longer. You don't just feel things, you absorb them. Other people's moods leak into your body. Their disappointment feels like your failure. Their silence feels like rejection. And when someone toxic enters that emotional ecosystem, they don't need to attack you directly. All they have to do is subtly withdraw validation. Toxic people often survive by outsourcing their inner chaos. Instead of processing their own insecurity, they project it outward, and unconsciously, they gravitate toward people who care too much, because those people will try harder, explain more, apologize faster, and doubt themselves sooner. Not because they're weak, but because they're emotionally invested. At first, it doesn't look toxic. It looks like confusion, mixed signals, hot and cold behavior. One moment you feel close, seen, almost chosen. The next moment, you feel like you've done something wrong, but you can't quite name what it is. So, your mind does what it does best. It searches inward. You replay your words. You soften your boundaries. You tell yourself, maybe I'm expecting too much. This is where self-doubt is born, not from obvious cruelty, but from emotional inconsistency. Psychologically, the brain hates uncertainty more than pain. When affection becomes unpredictable, your nervous system stays on high alert. Dopamine spikes during moments of approval, then crash during withdrawal. This creates an emotional addiction loop. You start associating your worth with their reactions, and slowly, your internal compass stops working. You stop trusting what you feel unless someone else confirms it. People who care too much often grew up learning that love had to be earned. Maybe you had to be mature too early. Maybe you became the emotional anchor in your family. Maybe your feelings were minimized. So, you learned to read others instead of expressing yourself. Over time, you became very good at understanding people, but not always protecting yourself. There is a beautiful side to this. Your depth, your loyalty, your ability to love without keeping score. You feel deeply because you are alive, present, and human. In a world that often avoids vulnerability, you bring warmth where there is emotional coldness. That is not something to be ashamed of, but there is also a shadow side. When caring becomes self-abandonment, when empathy turns into over-explaining, when understanding others becomes a way to avoid being understood yourself, when you start shrinking your needs so others don't feel uncomfortable, toxic dynamics thrive in that space. Not because you allow abuse, but because you keep hoping clarity will come if you just try harder. You believe that if you explain your feelings well enough, they'll finally see you. But some people don't misunderstand you. They simply benefit from you doubting yourself. And this is the hardest truth to accept. Not everyone who hurts you is confused. Some people are very clear. They just don't care enough to change. That realization hurts people who care deeply more than anyone else. Because you would never do that to someone. You assume others operate from the same emotional integrity. But psychology shows us that empathy levels vary dramatically. What feels obvious to you may be invisible to someone else, or worse, something they consciously ignore. The moment you start healing is not when you stop caring. It's when you stop confusing caring with self-erasure. When you realize that your sensitivity is not the problem, unreciprocated emotional labor is. Healthy relationships don't make you feel like you're constantly auditioning for reassurance. They don't require you to doubt your memory, your feelings, or your worth. When you're with the right people, caring doesn't drain you, it grounds you. You don't feel anxious after conversations. You don't rehearse your words in your head. You don't feel like you're too much. You feel safe being exactly as you are. And maybe the deepest shift happens when you stop asking, "Why do they make me feel this way?" and start asking, "Why am I still trying to prove myself here?" That question ain't meant to shame you. It's meant to wake you up, because people who care too much often don't need to learn how to love better. They need to learn how to choose themselves without guilt, to trust that their emotions are signals, not inconveniences, to understand that being kind doesn't require tolerating confusion, neglect, or emotional imbalance. You are never too sensitive. You are just in environments that benefited from you not noticing your own pain. And maybe tonight, instead of questioning your worth, you let this thought sit with you. What if the part of you that cares so deeply ain't what needs fixing, but what needs protecting? If this resonated, don't rush to change yourself. Just notice. Notice where you feel calm. Notice where you feel small. And ask yourself, quietly and honestly, who am I when I stop trying so hard to be understood?